Okay.
Okay. Hi, and welcome to the latest episode of A Quiet Rebellion Against the Ordinary. And today I am super excited to have my friend Sarah Lewis-Briggs on the line. And we are going to talk today about creativity and making money and probably lots of other things in between. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you, Sarah, for being on the call with me.
No problem. Hello.
Hi. You have a really interesting background because you're a chartered surveyor.
Yeah, that's right.
Which if people who aren't from the UK, it's like, I don't really know what you do anyway. You call a chartered surveyor out when you need your house sold.
Well, I always say to people that I primarily deal with commercial estate management and valuation.
Right.
Because I do, my background is primarily commercial property. And as you say, people haven't got a clue what. I mean, even people in this country don't know what a chartered surveyor is, really.
Case in point. But I do know that you had to go to university. You've had to done years and years and years of study, and you've achieved professional status in your chosen field. So congrats.
Yeah, but that wasn't where I started off. I did my degree was English with music.
Was it?
Music with English, actually. At one point, I think I was the only chartered surveyor in London that I knew of who actually had a music degree. So I've sort of done a whole full circle thing. And although surveying's very interesting, graduating with an arts degree, I always felt, I was living in London and I felt the need of a career. And just having an arts degree didn't feel like enough. So, I was hunting around for what profession to go for. And property seemed interesting. And I still find it interesting. But it's quite interesting that, now, sort of 20, 30 years on, however, I don't like to think how many it is. I'm going back to the sort of the English and the music in a way. And other things.
So, earning money by being a surveyor, I mean, that's kind of it is a very ordinary. I know you've done a lot of training, but it is kind of a very safe kind of career move, isn't it?
Yep. Oh, absolutely. And when I chose surveying as my sort of chosen career path, I mean, I was in my mid-20s, getting on to for my late 20s before I started. At that point, the career prospects for surveyors were that there was something like 0.01% were unemployed. So, it was definitely a sort of safe choice as well as being an interesting one. And and as I said, I've got this music and English degree. I sort of gone through the interview process for quite a lot of careers, including, believe it or not, accountancy.
Oh no, why? What were you on?
I know. And in fact, there was one guy who interviewed me at one of the top accountancy firms, and he said to me, you're perfectly capable of doing it, but I don't think you'll stick to it. And he was quite right. I mean, he didn't even let me go through to second interview stage, and he got me, he sussed me out. I think it was just that thing of, I'm the daughter of an engineer. And my mum was a teacher, but sort of a housewife as well. And I think I was just brought up to go for the safe option, really. And I think that relates to so much more than just your work, actually, because recently I was saying to someone yesterday something about, I want to put this the right way, just in case my mum happens to see this. I think my parents are of that generation where you didn't really take risks. And I think for me, career-wise and as a person, I wasn't meant to take risks. Even changing, because I started off reading English at university and then I switched to music. And I remember my dad saying something about, he didn't understand daughters, how they got to, whatever age, and then they went and did something weird like music. There's me now saying to my daughter, look, if you want to be a performer, go and do that now and do university, do the performing, and then become a doctor or whatever later.
So
I think
it's a complete turnaround.
Yeah, and I think it's partly a generational thing. They grew up throughout and just after the war, and you were meant to settle down and everything, and that's what they wanted as well. But that's not anything that really ever appealed to me. I always, with surveying, I got on really well with surveying, but at one point I chucked it in and went off to be a holiday rep. And when I came back, I was less worried about it as a career. And then, of course, it's that sort of Buddhist thing of I wasn't trying. So then I started going up the management ladder. But I always felt a bit like a square peg in a round hole. And I always felt that whole 9 to 5 thing, I was always somehow straining against it. I didn't like being at someone else's behest and having to work 9 to 5, 9 to 6 or whatever, Monday to Friday. It fits in well with everybody else's life on the whole, and that's how most of the world is, I suppose, or a lot of it. But there was something in me that always sort of was conflicting against it.
Which brings us to creativity. What you do now is, it's completely different, isn't it? Tell people what you do. How you make money being creative.
Yeah, well, I do some surveying still, on a 0 hours contract. That's sort of, it gives me a base income basically. But I also do some writing. I had a bit of a lull, but that's picking up again. I've just done the most brilliant feature. I'm not saying the feature is brilliant, but the process of doing it was. It's a feature about artists around Brampton, where I live. And there's this enormous network of arts and crafts people, really talented people, really inspirational people, and people who are making their money out of being creative. And the fascinating thing was not only me and finding that a lot of them felt the same way about the area or about life as I did. The references to sort of their souls feeling right here. And one of the comments was that the area sort of draws you in and then you can't leave because it's too interesting, that sort of thing. There were so many sort of resonances with things. I thought, exactly. But also, it goes back generations, because there's the local family, the Howard family, as of Castle Howard, but they're no longer that branch. They've influenced things a lot around here, like the secondary schools, William Howard School, that sort of thing. But the 9th Earl was a pre-Raphaelite, and he actually chose to concentrate on his art while his wife ran the estate and everything. And his granddaughter was Winifred Nicholson, and he was very much a role model, mentor for Winifred Nicholson. And her granddaughter, who's an artist, still lives locally. Winifred Nicholson was the mentor for her granddaughter. And researching that feature was just brilliant. And I just love getting out and meeting people and then writing about them anyway. But yeah, I also do a bit of singing, although I don't always get paid for that. And then I'm also training to be a chef, and I do some private chef work and I do some charity dinners.
That's amazing. So training to be a chef, is this something that you want to do full time or more than part time?
Well, when I started the course, I looked up the job opportunities for chefs, and obviously, we all have to eat, so there's opportunities all over the place. And I'd like to travel. I'd like to work in a ski resort. So I was thinking, I could be a chef in a ski resort, and it could be in Italy, so I can use my Italian because I'm learning Italian as well. But as I've had a couple of part-time chef jobs. I'm also doing these private chef dinners and charity dinners. And I'm beginning to think, actually, I quite like doing private chef work because I don't have a boss then. And it goes back to the same thing of, I'm not then doing it every day of the week. I'm not cooking the same things every day. I'm deciding on the menu along with the clients. And it just gives me a bit more freedom and a bit more scope to be creative. So I'm not quite sure where it's going to go yet.
It'll go where it needs to go. So how do people respond? Yeah. Because you're a midlife lady, as am I. And I mean, it's not normal for us to reach a certain age and then decide, no, screw this. I want to do something my way. I want to be creative. I want to do things differently. I want to have life on my terms. How do people respond to that? Because it's not normal, Sarah. It's not normal. It's great.
Yeah. I think I'm lucky that where I live, there are a lot of creative people. A lot of the features I've written over the past few years living up here have been about people who, one woman I met, she'd be a perfect interviewee for you. She worked as a lawyer dealing with something like child abuse cases, something really heavy, down either the Midlands or London, I can't remember. She now, for her work, makes paper mache models and works in the archives, in the education department at the archives. I just think it's brilliant, and I've met so many people like that up here. And so I think in this area, because it's so rural, I think there's less of an emphasis on having to have the newest car, or I just think it's a bit less materialistic than, say, in London. London's great, but I'm now beginning to think that life in a big city is very pressurised, it's very fast, you don't have time to think. And the sort of antidote to feeling bored or just having that half hour of thinking, what am I going to do? You go to the shops. I used to do it in Bristol, and my ex-husband will say the same, that when the kids were young, on a Saturday morning, if it's a wet Saturday and we didn't know what to do, we'd go up to the Mall at Cribbs Causeway and look around John Lewis. And at that point, I was earning enough money that I could just say, I fancy buying that, I'll buy it, or I will have tea out or whatever. I think when you live somewhere rural, there's far more of a connection with nature, and you just have more time to sort of think somehow. And it's not that people aren't busy, because they are, but it's somehow perhaps we're more grounded, or I'm not quite sure how to express it really. But I think that helps all the creative thoughts come out. And at the same time, then there's less pressure to have everything brand new and everything looking fantastic. Do you know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. So where you live, for people that don't know you, you live up in the north of England, near Cumbria, where it is quite rural and open and not many big things. Well, there's big things going on, but there's not really like big shopping centres, and it's beautiful up there, isn't it?
Oh, it's absolutely stunning. I'm 10 miles east of Carlisle, up near Hadrian's Wall. I can go trail running or walking, without going on the road very much at all. And I could go for miles. I've run sort of, I think 16 miles along Hadrian's Wall. And yes, there'll be the odd farmhouse. Or if you go out for a bike ride, you might see 2 cars. Whereas when I lived in London, if I went for a bike ride, I'd cycle from home through the traffic to Richmond Park, and then Richmond Park would just be thronging with people anyway. It's different. It's just different.
In your experience, because you've obviously found this place that really resonates with you and you absolutely love where you live, do you feel that the spirit of the place is really important to your kind of your creative journey?
I think, yes, definitely. And I think the spirit of the place has always been important to me. I remember when I was at university in Nottingham, and I remember one day walking across the campus and just sitting down on the grass to just feel the grass. But it wasn't something that I really became aware of until I lived in Cumbria. And then the whole spirit, it just sort of clicked into place more. And yes, I mean, if I go out for a run, quite often I'm writing blog posts in my head or having ideas for food, or it's definitely, for me, it's been really important. And that was what was interesting about this interview with these artists, that it was the same for them. And the other comment, which was interesting, because for me it's about history, it's about feeling part of a long line of something. I mean, when I stand on Hadrian's Wall, I can almost see the border reivers going backwards and forwards. Do you know what I mean? And yeah, now I've lost my train of thread. Yeah, it's just, yeah, it's really important. And I think in a city, because it's so easy to rush around, it's very easy to lose that sense, almost of you're in a core, and almost of feeling very, very rooted and part of a long, continuous line of history. And it's the sort of thing that makes me think, if all that happens is that I end up pushing up daisies, that's fine, because that soil's there and someone else will walk on it, and do you know what I mean? And you're part of it. Yeah. It's really, I'm quite envious that you found such a magical place that really resonates with you, and that you can really explore your creativity in such a safe and beautiful environment. For other people who aren't quite as lucky to find their place, and especially if you live in a big city, how do you feel that they can connect to the spirit of place? Have you got any tips? Well, for me, I used to find, again, when I was in London, that I used to go into, say, the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Westminster. I'm not a Roman Catholic. I'm not even, I was brought up as a churchgoer, but I'm open-minded about religion. And it was just finding that place where you could actually have a few moments of just being alone with your thoughts. And I've always, candles are fantastic. And, even going into a church and lighting a candle and doing it completely for yourself, not for any prayers for the dead or anything like that, but just to light a candle and just sort of stand there and look at the candle flame and just be with your thoughts. And actually, a few years ago, I went through a really bad time. I think you and I spoke at the time. I was completely brokenhearted and devastated about a particular man. And at that point, the woods near where I live were one of my havens, as it were. And the other place I used to go was into Carlisle Cathedral, and I would just go into one of the little side chapels and just be there with my thoughts. And quite often I'd just be there with tears rolling down my face. But, it's that, for me, it's that just getting that space to yourself. And I think, it's very difficult, but I remember my mum saying once to me that even if I didn't feel religious, to go into a church and just use it for yourself like that, to use that atmosphere of calm, and just get something back for yourself, then that's fine. That's really good advice, because wherever you go in a city, there's always a church, there's always some kind of
religious temple that you can just sit in.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. There's a Buddhist temple down near Ulverston, and you can just be in the grounds of it and you feel just a calmness. Another place that I liked was I got particularly distressed when I was working in Whitehaven. I felt just some really bad sort of spirit of place there. And yet there's a little garden right in the middle of the town, where in fact there used to be a church. It's an old churchyard, and they've got a little maze that you can walk around in the middle. And I used to just nip in there. Or the other thing, if people, I think, live in a city that's next to the sea, is just to stand and look out at the sea. That's also always been one of my, I mean, you like the sea.
I do.
I think there's something about it going on forever, isn't it?
It puts everything in perspective, because you're just this little person, and there is the sea in it, and that sea connects every other living person in some way or another. So
absolutely.
It's just beautiful. I love the sea.
Yeah. And of course, we came from water. Water is what gives us life, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
So really, I suppose it's about finding what's in your heart. It's to become aware, isn't it, of what feels good, even if you're in a city, that there will be a place where you can get that peace. For me, when I was in London, it was Cleopatra's Needle on the Embankment. That was my place to go to, because it didn't matter how busy or bustling it was. That's my little sacred place in London.
Yeah.
But it's just being aware. I love churches myself. I always find them to be places of power, even if I don't believe in the church. But the actual space is beautiful. That's really good advice. Yeah. And yes. Sorry. Yeah.
I was just going to say, people shouldn't worry about not being religious. I know, but having said that, I know there are people that go into churches and just feel really bad. So obviously not a good place for them, but I've always felt that if there's a God, then it's not necessarily God or the Muslim God or the Jewish God or whatever. It's more a good thing, and that whoever he, she, or it is would be welcoming of everybody.
I think so
that's
too.
my own personal belief, anyway.
I agree. And before we wrap up, what advice would you give to people who do want a more creative lifestyle, who want to start making money more creatively? Have you got any advice? Because it's scary to stand there and think about doing things that are different.
I think one of the things I've had to come to terms with is the fact that because I'm responsible for my 3 kids, I have to be reliant on tax credits, which I didn't want to be. I mean, I took a surveying job 2.5 years ago, thinking that, oh, well, that's good. I can work full time. I won't need tax credits. But actually, that was when I was working in Whitehaven, and it all went horribly, horribly wrong. I just couldn't cope with it. And I had to just sort of think, well, okay, if I only earn 20 grand a year, the tax credits are there to help me. And, I'm not saying people should scrounge off the state, but sometimes to balance things, the looking after the children, the being creative, and the earning enough money, and the paying the mortgage, you have to take what you give them. And I think it's, you've sometimes said things about sort of being grateful, being thankful for things. And I think that is so true. And sometimes I think if you're feeling low or depressed, it's very difficult to feel thankful for things. But actually, there are things are being given to us all the time. And I think once you turn it round, and actually you start being given more things. And I really firmly believe if you follow the right thing, the right path, and do what your heart is telling you to do, then it'll work. I really, really believe that.
Me
And
too.
that's
That is
why-
just beautiful advice. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you.
No problem.
Is there anything else you'd like to add today?
Go for it.
Go for it. Yes, go for it. Oh, it's been such a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for giving your time to me to talk about, you know, your quiet rebellion up north.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
No problem.
And I'll post some details where people can find you and maybe book you for private events, singing and catering and writing.
Yeah. Brilliant.
So, thank you so much. And thank you everyone for listening.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.
Everyone.
Bye.